I learned that I can't control anyone else but myself, and that no one is responsible for my happiness but me, that I am the architect of my life, that I can and will be not just a survivor of things that happen to me, but a thriver. I will use the pain for the greater good, for to be a source of strength for other people. I will not be defined by what happened to me, but I will turn it into a force for good in some way.
Hello everyone, today's episode is very special for me. This month, my mom turns 50 years old, and there's no better way to wish her happy birthday than an episode with a wonderful woman who wrote a book about 50 after 50, Reframing Next Chapter of Your Life. A lot can happen in 50 years. We build trauma, survive disappointments, and hit rock bottom one way or another. This will be an empowering episode on real survivors. Today, I would like to remember all the strong women out there who are real warriors. Just like my mother, no matter the type of trauma you have faced before, you are a real life champion, and this episode is for you. Hello everyone, and welcome to the On the Ball podcast, where we have curious conversation about life, career, spirituality, and anything in between. My name is Eniko Toth, a civil engineer turned world traveler, public speaker, trainer, and Toastmasters champion. My goal is to bring you inspirational topics and people that can help you find your own definition of success. When you are ready, it is time to be on the ball. This podcast will be truly inspiring for you and probably for many people you know. So please share the link of the podcast with them. Also, a quick reminder, hit the subscribe and love buttons to get notified about the upcoming episodes. Then share a rating and a review if you like what you are listening to. I'm super excited for the podcast today. My guest is an unbelievable woman who I had the pleasure to meet in January on a deep networking event. And even though we only had 10 minutes, I immediately felt that I would love to learn more about her story. So here we are. Leonard Olsen is not only an accomplished attorney, but also a mother, speaker, and an author of the famous self-help book, 50 After 50, Reframing the Next Chapter of Your Life, which is about accomplishing 50 things after the age 50. The list spanned from physical challenges, adventures, travels, and lifestyle changes. This episode is about the key elements of acting now and overcoming our difficulties. Maria will share her journey from divorce, addiction, self-hatred, and emptiness syndrome back to the light and success. Via her self-reflection, she aids people overcome trauma and get unstuck. If you would like to connect with Maria and check out her books, go to her website, marialeonardolsen.com. You can find it in the podcast description. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the On the Ball podcast, where we are having a conversation with Leonard Olsen, the writer of 50 After 50. I'm so happy that you are here, and I'm so grateful for that short time that we managed to spend together on this deep networking event with Twine. And thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I think it was not a coincidence that we were randomly matched to speak that day because we have so much in common. Especially having to do with how we want to live our lives and look for new opportunities and become our best version. So I'm so excited to be on your show today.
Definitely, and I totally agree with you on our views on life. And even though sometimes things seem uncertain or like we don't know why it happens, it always happens for a reason, and I'm so grateful for it. So my first question to you is 50 after 50. What was so special at the age 50 that made you write this book and made a change in your life?
Well, age 50 is a common reckoning point for most people, I believe. And for me, the universe conspired for multiple things to happen in my 50th year. I got divorced. I got sober from alcoholism. I became an empty nester, meaning that my children had left the home because they were old enough to go out on their own. And I was living alone for the first time in my life. So necessarily things had to change in my life. And my gift to myself upon reaching 50 was to try 50 new things to explore how I wanted to live the next chapter of my life. And as I talked about it with other people, I felt I struck a chord because they wanted to reinvigorate their lives too, not even necessarily for reaching age 50, but it was a really good way to examine how I was living my life and what I wanted to try, because we don't know how much time we have left. And I found it useful, as have so many others, to write down actually the things you want to accomplish in your life or the directions you want to take, or at least try. And I endeavor to live each day as if it might be my last, even though that's not a practical way to live. It is a way that I strive to live so that I'm not wasting time.
Wow, yes. And you already started with something so meaningful and so useful for the listeners. That tip that we should write down our goals and wishes. Sometimes we are just thinking them and we believe it's going to happen magically. But
Yes.
the writing down has an extra effect and an extra power on making it happen. And as you
Yes.
mentioned, for many people, 50 is the turning point. However, many of us would like to do the things we would love to do before the age 50. However, we are afraid for some reason. So, what would you suggest to those listeners who don't want to wait until their 50th birthday to make changes in their lives?
Right. Well, one thing that I learned during my 50th year, and it is a famous quote that I didn't know before I started actually looking for inspiration, is that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and walking through it anyway, doing it anyway. And so some of the things on my list were very uncomfortable for me, but I did them anyway because I wanted to stretch my comfort zone and feel, or at least know, that I could experience discomfort, something I ran away from for most of my life, and survive and even thrive and even learn something from that experience and see that I wasn't, well, that I'm stronger than I think that I am. And if you or I don't test that, we never know. So I have written about advice I would give my younger self. And sometimes I do speak specifically to younger audiences about not wasting their time. Because when we're young, we often feel invincible. We even think that bad things aren't going to happen to us. And yet, we all know someone who died young. So, in this part of my life, one thing that I advise younger people, or anyone to do actually, is that many of us are careful about how we spend our money because we know we don't have enough money to do something, we can't do it. But yet, time is more important than money because we can't buy time. We can't manufacture time. We don't know how much time each of us has. And yet, many of us just give it away without thinking. So that when I'm asked to do something, I'm very intentional about my response. And I pause and ask myself, is this something I really want to do? Or am I doing it just to please somebody else? Is this something that I have the energy for? Or am I going to unnecessarily deplete my energy in order to do this one more thing? So I'm very conscious about the need to replenish my energy and commit to myself that I will take good care of myself. And that includes not overextending myself and needlessly using energy that I could use in a way that's really more important to me. So that's my number one advice, to practice intentionality and to practice the pause before taking on anything new, so that everything on your plate is something that you chose, not something that was imposed upon you, if you can at all design your life that way. And we all can, because there are things we can say no to. And in saying no, you don't owe other people an explanation. There are certain situations in which you might, but more often than not, I will say, oh, I have another commitment. And I don't owe the other person an explanation of what that commitment is, because that commitment can be to myself. It can be to replenishing my energy reserve. It can be to rest, sleep, relaxation. It can be to anything. But most people won't ask you the follow-up question, well, why not? What are you doing? And it takes someone with a lot of nerve to press in that way. And maybe someone will, but I advise everyone to hold your ground, because we don't need to tell everyone everything. And we need to learn self-care so that we can be the best version of ourselves, so that we can be the best friend we can be, sibling, sister, mother, employee. It starts with putting on your own oxygen mask and taking care of yourself so that you can, in turn, give of yourself to others.
I love that powerful message, how you aligned our insecurity with money, that we are not really thinking about our time. And it really speaks to me as well. I'm always trying to prioritize and find, like, okay, what do I actually want to give my energy to? But for some reason, I still struggle with saying no to things that people ask me. So thinking
Yeah.
about that and pausing for a second could be something that I should implement in my life too. So thank you very much.
Sure. I like to call myself a recovering people pleaser, because
Mm.
that was a driving force in my life. I felt like I wanted everyone to like me, but the fact is that not everyone is going to like me, and I can't control the way other people think or feel. And so I gave up trying to control that. I mean, I'm still courteous and try to respect other people's feelings, but knowing that what other people think of me is not within my control has freed up so much emotional bandwidth in my being, and lightened the load for me in so many ways.
Wow, yes. And you mentioned that you had to break through your comfort zone. You had to build that courage. So, what would be the practical steps of building courage and strength so that we can make these steps?
Yeah, well, there are many ways to do it. Physically speaking, I'm afraid of heights, and skiing is something that scares me if I'm up too high, if it's a vertical looking drop. So I will take incremental steps to better my skills at skiing. I used to be afraid of horses, for instance, and I took horseback riding lessons so that I could overcome that fear. And it just felt so great to eliminate that fear and to learn how to practice a new skill. That was really a growth experience for me. I also, I'm not a good singer, for instance, but I wanted to know what it felt like to sing on stage. So I went to an open mic night where I didn't know anybody, and I got up on stage and sang, and I was terrible, but I didn't die. I didn't die. And
Yeah.
so it helped me build confidence in public speaking, in being on a stage at all, because
Mm.
I went through something where I knew I was terrible, and I found that I didn't die. I didn't throw up in front of other people. I survived. It's not going to kill me. So in that instance, something that didn't kill me made me stronger. So I would encourage people to examine what their fears are and take incremental steps to experience them in a safe way, and to see that you're stronger than you think. And the more we challenge ourselves, the stronger and more confident we become. So I would do that. There are some people who are really good writers who are afraid of submitting their work because they're afraid of rejection or they're afraid of ridicule. And rejection is just part of life. We learn through our mistakes. Those become learning experiences if we're open to the lesson. And we come to realize that life is a series of experiments for many of us, and trying, and you can't succeed if you don't try. because 100% of the successes would not have happened if one didn't try. So I think expanding your comfort zone, or at least testing your comfort zone, is so important for anyone to make any sort of progress at all. And perhaps getting, if you're still hesitant, perhaps getting an accountability partner, getting another person to cheer you on, or to even know that you've set this goal for yourself so that you won't back out, is helpful. Sometimes when I'm writing, since I've written several books, when I'm writing, I'll have an accountability partner to keep me on track. I'll say, for instance, I want to have a chapter done by the end of this month. And then we'll set a date for a call so that we can tell each other how far we got on our goals. And that helps to keep me moving forward. And I found that for things like that and exercise, if I don't have an accountability partner, there's less of a chance that I'm actually going to do it.
It is so powerful to have someone to actually nudge you on and just
Yeah.
be there to look up and, are you really doing it or are
Yeah.
you not? It has a
Exactly.
superpower, and it makes you actually do the things that you said you are going to do.
Yes.
And I also related, like what you mentioned, one of my classmates, once we were asked, what is courage? And he was like, facing our fears.
Mm.
So finding a creative environment where we can still feel safe, but face our fears there, could be something to get started. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Exactly.
And my next question is, you mentioned you have been through quite a lot in your life, and you mentioned you had a time where you had this emptiness syndrome and self-hatred. So what would be the steps from self-hatred to self-love?
Yes. Well, I tried many things, and what works for one person may not work for another. But some of the helpful tools that I found were, number one, allowing a trusted friend or professional therapist to bear witness to my pain. And trauma is something that frequently requires help of a trained professional to work through. And I had some trauma in my childhood, such as I was raped and I never told anyone for decades. But it would have been more helpful to me to share that with someone who could help me realize that it wasn't my fault, and that it doesn't have to define me, and that I can move through the stages of processing what happened to me without being permanently damaged. And because I did not work through that trauma, it would pop up and affect me in ways I wasn't even aware of. I could lash out at someone, for instance, because they triggered a memory in me that spurred self-hatred and confusion about what had happened and why that had happened to me. So I would advise or implore even anyone who has gone through some trauma that they haven't been able to share with anyone, to at least share it with someone you trust in your life, or a therapist, or both, to see if there are ways that you could move through that experience and not let it affect you negatively in your current life. Then other things that have helped me are doing esteemable acts. The more that I help someone else, especially people who have been sexually assaulted, the more I feel better about myself, that I have used my pain in a constructive way to help somebody else and to lessen their pain. Another way is I practice gratitude lists. Uh, every day, I think of at least three things for which I am grateful, from the profound to the prosaic, like the fact that I can still see, the fact that I can walk, the fact that I have access to clean water, and then really profound things, the fact that I can experience love and give love and have a family that loves me. So having an attitude of gratitude has changed my life significantly and moved me into a place of self-love, because if we are continually looking at the things we don't have, then we will never have enough. But if we see the things and appreciate the things that we do have, we will always have enough. Another thing that I tried was, or I use this periodically when I'm feeling low, is the use of affirmations. Affirmations about what I do like about myself or what I do like about other people. I am enough, for instance. I am working towards the greater good. I am trying to be my best version. I am contributing to the world. I am making the world a better place. Those are examples of affirmations that I use to help keep me in a positive state of mind and moving forward. And in my relationships, I write down, in fact, with my partner, I send him a text every day of something I appreciate about him.
That's
And it can
beautiful.
be something very small or it can be something very large. And for instance, today I texted him, I love I won't say his name in case he wants privacy today, because he built us a lovely fire this weekend that we both enjoyed. So that helps me to stay looking at what I do like about him rather than his faults and foibles, because we're all human. There's never going to be a perfect human being. And I want to magnify in my mind the things I love about him rather than to dwell on the irritations of life and living with another person, because those are realities. So that which we focus on becomes magnified. So those are a few of the things that I tried. But I will say that my list of positive things in my life and practices in my toolkit, it is constantly evolving. And I keep notes on my phone of things that help me and things that I want to try. And I keep these lists organic so that I'm continually growing and moving forward. So one thing that may work for me might not work for you. But maybe in 10 years, you'll say, look at this list. Oh, yeah, I want to try that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask my partner if he'll text me. Text may not even exist in 10 years. It might be some other thing. But let's focus on something positive for us. So those are some things I would suggest.
In a nutshell, it would be like then in those 5 steps, being vulnerable and admitting that we have been through hell and back, and being strong and being brave enough to say it. Then the second one was to help others who feel the same way, and then being grateful, setting affirmations for ourselves, and then accepting others for who they are. They are beautiful steps. And are these related to how you help people getting unstuck, or do you also include some other things there?
Those are basic themes that run through all of the things in my book called 50 After 50. But yes, those are the basic things, and ways of practicing self-care also include meditation as a way to become more present. I spent a lot of my earlier life worrying about the future or fretting about the past, things that I couldn't control. And now I spend a lot of my energy focusing on the present and what I can control. And so meditation is one of the tools I use to remain present. And when I was younger, I thought that meditation required a lot of time, but it doesn't. There are many ways to meditate. And meditation can consist of taking one deep cleansing breath, because when you're focusing on your breath, you're fully present. You cannot simultaneously be worrying about the future or thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that last year, whatever it is that's keeping you from being present. It helps reset you. It brings your blood pressure down. It focuses you. And so I do deep breathing, i.e., one form of meditation throughout the day, especially when in traffic, when driving or at a red light. It helps reset me and keeps me from getting upset about almost anything. I'm a much calmer person today because I practice meditation and being present. So that is one very, very important tool. The other tool that I didn't mention, but through which those themes emerge, include surrounding myself intentionally with people who bring out the best in me, who encourage me, who help me to be my best version. So there are or were a lot of negative people in my life. I limit or exclude them from my life as much as possible. So that's harder to do with family members, but we get to choose with whom we spend our time by and large, especially during a pandemic. And so I limit my time with other people that are anyone who I perceive to be negative or not encouraging me in the way that I want to live my life. And I bring into my life positive people. And one of the reasons I did that exercise that both of us did about deep connecting was because I knew that I would encounter people who are looking for more in their lives. And I want to be challenged by people who are looking, who are seekers, who are continually learning and trying to add to their lives things that enrich them. So I encourage people to try new things, to never stop learning, and to always look for the lesson, because every person and situation has the capacity to teach us something if we are open to the lesson. And so, for instance, if I'm encountering someone who tries my patience, I pause and think, what is the universe trying to teach me here? And it can be as simple as patience, because I'm not typically a very patient person. So it may be teaching me to just take a breath and listen to this person, give them a chance to express themselves.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes we just need to pause and think, what is the lesson? Sometimes, however, there's this little thing sitting on our shoulders, talking to us, telling us all these limiting beliefs and telling us we are less than others. And how can we be more aware of that little thing on the shoulder? And how can we eliminate it from our lives so we start believing in ourselves?
Yes, many people suffer from that. I like to call it the negative tape in my mind. And when we're in a dark place, being alone in our thoughts is a dangerous place to be. So I would recommend and advise people to share what's in their minds and try to get it out of their minds. Journal about the negative thoughts. Put your worries, write down your worries and negative thoughts and put them in a box. I like to call it my God box or my worry box. And then look in that box a month later. And for me, almost every single thing in that box never came true and was a useless expenditure of my mind, my time. So that helps me learn not to worry about small things so much and not to what I call future trip, worry about things that aren't going to happen anyway. The other thing is to think about how you're talking to yourself, even write it down, and then say to yourself, do this exercise. Is this something I would say to someone I love? Because we are hardest on ourselves. And then when I was more aware of how I was speaking to myself and questioning, would I ever talk to anyone this way? The answer is no. And so that helped me learn to be kinder and practice self-compassion towards myself, because I'm very compassionate towards other people, but I had to learn how to be compassionate towards myself and to accept myself for who I am and to accept that I am human and will make mistakes, but that I don't have to repeat the mistakes. I can learn from them and I don't have to be defined by my mistakes. So those are some ways that I changed the negative tape in my head, writing them down, releasing them by putting them in a box and then looking at them later and realizing that they weren't true. And by checking in on myself often and practicing self-compassion.
And what did you learn from your mistakes and everything that happened in your life? So from the divorce, the addiction, and all the traumas in your life, what was the learning curve after that?
Right. Oh gosh, so many lessons. I learned that I can't control anyone else but myself, and that no one is responsible for my happiness but me, that I am the architect of my life, that I can and will be not just a survivor of things that happen to me, but a thriver. I will use the pain for the greater good, for to be a source of strength for other people. I will not be defined by what happened to me, but I will turn it into a force for good in some way. I speak out, for example, on the rape culture in the United States. And when I do public speaking about um, sexual assault in our country, almost every time people come up to me and say, "You're so brave. I can't believe you said that in public. And you've given me some strength to talk about what happened to me." And the statistics in the US are 1 in 4 women will have been sexually assaulted in her lifetime. And those are only reported cases. And most women keep it a secret and they're afraid and they don't want to talk about it and think that it is a reflection on themselves. But part of my goal is to help people not feel so alone or damaged or afraid by what happened to them, and realize that it's not their fault and that they can, number one, learn from it. Number two, be a support for someone else. And number three, even thrive and go further than they thought as a whole person because of what happened to them.
Yes, when I was in the States as well, I met quite a few people. And as you said, I met a few of those women who have gone through challenges in their lives similar to yours. And it has affected their lives tremendous ways. Some were not able to talk about it, and some were. And the changes and the differences between those two people were incredible. One was thriving, and one was still kind of stuck in the past and always bringing it up. So it's hard to go through, and it's important to talk about it. So thank you for the work that you are putting in and sharing your story with the world. So you encourage women to do the same.
Thank you.
And what was it with your like when you were getting off your addiction? Do you still practice some of those things that you learned there? And what are those practices then?
Yes, I go to something called Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a 12-step program of recovery. And I sponsor young women who are also facing addiction issues. And I actually believe that the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are a good guide for living for every human being. I would call it a guide to being a good human, because it's all about accepting that there's something bigger than yourself, taking responsibility for your actions, when you're wrong, promptly admitting it, and helping others.
Mhm.
So I use those steps in my daily life. And I still go to the meetings because it's like refilling my tank. It's like medicine for my soul, for my being, to reinforce the lessons of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the biggest lessons is acceptance, practicing acceptance in all my affairs, practicing the fact that I am solely responsible for my actions. And this is another good lesson, that I can't control my first thought, but I can
Oh,
control my second thought and I can control my actions. So maybe something will come in my mind that's really negative. Then I can talk back to that thought. I can say, that's old Maria. I don't want to be that person. That's old thinking. I'm going to let go of that thought. And I'm going to replace it with something positive, which is, I think I'll exercise today, or something else, whatever it happens to be. But I've trained my mind to think in positive ways and to discard negative thoughts and to forgive myself if some old pattern emerges, to realize that I'm just human and that I'm continually learning. So other things that the program of AA has helped me with is to give back every day. There is so much bigger than me. I'm just a speck in this universe, but I can bloom where I'm planted. I can make whomever I come in contact with today a little lighter or feel a little bit more hope because I crossed their path today. So those are some of the things that I've learned through the 12-step program. And for me, it helps me so much that I'm going to continue in the program for the rest of my life. And now most of it is online because of COVID. And there are 12-step programs for everything dysfunctional you can ever think of. And there's something called AlAnon, which originally was started as a program for people who are friends or family members of those who are addicted to something. But now AlAnon is expanded to people who are in dysfunctional relationships. And I bet every single one of us has at least one dysfunctional relationship in our lives.
So it doesn't necessarily has to be a relationship.
Yeah. And so you can drop in on a meeting of AlAnon online. Just Google AlAnon and just listen and see if there's anything in there that speaks to you. They advise that you try 6 different meetings before you find one that gels with you, because we're all human. So every meeting has a different flavor and a different collection of personalities. And some are more strict, adhering to the 12 steps, than others that let people just kind of talk about whatever's bothering them. And the ones that feed me are those that stick more to the 12 steps. And so maybe you would look at the AlAnon directory of meetings and find one that is about the steps, or about they call them big book. The big book is their kind of guide and stories about people who followed the steps. So I would say AlAnon, which I also go to sometimes, is another invaluable resource for people who are struggling with dysfunction in their lives. So, yeah.
Do you think your childhood trauma had anything to do with your addiction and your divorce later on, or was it something else? And in that mindset that I'm addictive and I don't really want to change, what made you to switch, and what made you like, okay, now I need a difference, now I need to make a step out of it?
Yes. Addiction is sneaky. It sneaks up on you. You don't often know how it came to be or what happened. And there's something called reaching your bottom. And a bottom can be all kinds of things, but it's when you realize that something or some compulsion has taken over your life and affected it in a negative way, and that you can't stop or moderate. So I do believe that my childhood trauma led me toward addiction because I used alcohol as a way to anesthetize myself when I was feeling bad about myself or things that happened or things that I had done. I would drink more so I didn't have to think anymore. And it got out of control so that I was drinking and I couldn't stop drinking, and I was hiding my drinking from my family. And I couldn't just have one glass of wine, for instance. I had to drink until I felt I wasn't thinking anymore. It wasn't just one drink ever. So I reached my bottom when my then husband kicked me out of the house and said, until you get help, you're not welcome here anymore. I think you're a danger to yourself and to our family. So you need to get help. So that's when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous to seek help. And I was ashamed and I was full of self-hatred and I didn't want to go inside. And then I sat outside and I started seeing people I knew go in from church and from childhood and from the neighborhood. And then I realized that It's not just a caricature of bums, homeless people under the bridge drinking out of bottles and paper bags. It can happen to anyone. And I learned in that program from homeless people, but also from CEOs and all kinds of people who needed help. And one of the lessons of 12-step programs is that you can't do it alone, that we're stronger together, and that when we come together, we help each other. We don't feel like such aberrant people. And we see that many people suffer in similar manners, but that we can help each other through our experiences, our strength, and our hope together.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
When we join forces, we can tackle anything. When we join the hands, like
Yeah.
it's really hard to tear it apart. So that's an extra
Yeah.
force and it's an extra support. As we said also with about the accountability partners, when there's someone there to support you, you reach that extra
Yeah.
mile that you want to reach. And there, after so many years out of the industry, out of being an attorney and a lawyer, what made you come back? And was it hard to find your way back into that industry?
Yes, I had taken 15 years off to raise my children, and I feel it was a great privilege to be able to do that. And I'm so glad I had that opportunity. But when I got divorced, I did not ask for alimony because I felt so guilty for having drank my way out of that marriage. So I knew I had to go back to work. I knew that practicing law was something I was good at, but and also something that would enable me to support myself and in the way I wanted to live, so I could buy my own house, for instance. So I started out as a contract lawyer, just taking projects from small firms until I could prove myself that I still had the skills 15 years later. I took another test called the bar exam here in my state so that I could get another credential so people could see that I was still a good lawyer. And yeah, it was hard. I think the hardest part was technology because no one used the internet 15 years ago the way they do now. And a lot of my current work is done online. So I had to learn the technology piece of my practice. Um, and that was a little bit hard, but not undoable. And once I mastered how to use online meetings and online research better, that actually made my work easier. So yes, it was hard, but it was a very big growing experience. And I feel lucky that I can work as a lawyer and support myself as a single woman. And it it was ultimately a big growth experience and affirming experience that I still had it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
so many of us are afraid to go back to something we have done before. We are unsure if we can still be good at it, or that we're just changed around us so much that we are not fitting into that role anymore. So I think that you are such an inspiration for many, that you got through your trauma, got through all the addiction and the divorce and everything, and you still managed to get back to your career and do everything that you are doing now. And as I said, I think you're a motivation and inspiration for many to take those steps when they are afraid. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
doing all the
I
work.
really appreciate that. I appreciate that. And being on a podcast like this, where I can share my story in the hope that it can help anyone. I mean, even one person, if I've helped today, then I feel good about myself and feel like I've done my job.
Mm. So we are leading
Yeah.
up to our final questions, which the first one we answered on our Twine meeting on the deep networking, but I'm going to still ask it. What is your definition of success?
Ah, yes, yes. My definition of success has changed dramatically because I bought into the old definition for me of success, which was making a lot of money, having a big house, having all the things that define success culturally. But no, success for me is feeling good about myself. It's helping other people. It's feeling like I am using my unique gifts to make the world a better place in some way. And I believe I'm doing that today.
You
And
are.
thank you. And while success it is for me multifaceted in that I am an author and I feel like I'm successful at that. I'm a lawyer, feeling successful at that. And a mom, feeling like a successful mom too. So success has many dimensions and is something that I'm not static about. I feel like there will always be an opportunity to make the world a better place. And I'm going to continue doing that as long as I possibly can.
Beautiful, beautifully put. Thank you. The second question is that imagine this podcast is listened by many, many people, like millions, and you have 1 minute to share one of your most important messages. What would that be? What would you say?
Oh my goodness, I was not prepared for that. Okay. So this is my message. No one is responsible for your life but you. Only
Mm,
you can make yourself happy. Only you can push yourself forward and choose what attitude you're going to have in any given situation and choose your reaction or response. So be intentional about it. Your life is happening right now. Don't just waste it. Think carefully. How do I want to be? And then do it.
yes, do it now. Oh, I love that. The
Mhm.
next one is I'm talking about I talk a lot about learning something old every day. And I believe that there are so many old wisdoms out there that we can learn either from our parents, the grandparents, or even going back further, learning from a book or someone ancient. What was the greatest lesson that you learned from someone else that made a change in your life?
Uh, one, okay, I will say a book that I read called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist who was in a concentration camp during World War II, and everything was taken from him, everything but one thing. And that was his ability to choose his attitude in any situation. So a prison guard could be beating him, and he could choose in his mind what he wanted to think or behave like or act or say or feel. No one can take that away from a human being. So when something is going really wrong in my life, and things will go wrong, it can't possibly be just one linear happiness happy life. I practice the pause and think, how do I want to react or respond to this? How am I going to behave? How am I going to support someone else who's experiencing this? And then I intentionally choose what my response is going to be.
It's very similar to Nelson Mandela's story as well. If you have read his bibliography, that
Yes,
what happened to him in the prison didn't break him. It just made him stronger, made
yeah,
him more like who he is. And we can learn so much from these bibliographies and stories that are put out there to us to learn from. So, yeah.
absolutely. I
And the
agree.
very last question is you have been interviewed quite a few times. You had made speeches and presentations in front of many, and probably you got multiple questions. Questions could be repeating themselves because we are all interested in same things, but maybe some unique ones. What is a question that hardly gets asked but is important, you think?
Oh boy. Well, a question that was often asked of me that used to irritate me quite a bit, it was, where are you from? because I am not white, I'm
Mm.
biracial, it would offend me because people would assume that because I'm brown skinned that I can't possibly be American. But I spoke at a multicultural conference here in the United States a few times. And one of the answers I heard there was, I am a story. And
Ah.
that was so impactful for me because we are all an amalgam of our experiences, and none of us behaves 100% because we choose to behave that way, but because we are affected by what happened in our lives. So that has helped me to be more compassionate towards other people because everyone is a story and everyone's realities are different based on what happened in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very eye-opening question for me after I realized that all of us are affected by a myriad of experiences that we can't possibly know about another person. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't make assumptions anymore that another person is behaving a certain way because of anything I did. They could have gotten a bad diagnosis that day. I don't know. And so I stopped judging people and taking things personally because of that lesson and that question, and reworking in my mind what that question means.
Wow. Well, thank you, Maria, for sharing your story with us, sharing your perception of everything and how you live and see life and the world. I think you reached more than one person with this message. And that means you have had a wonderful day. And I'm so happy that you were here to share that with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your invitation and having the opportunity, because the more I talk about all of these positive things, the more it's reinforced in my life.
Yeah.
So it helped me too. Thank you.
Thank you. What a powerful episode! Thank you for listening. I hope you have gained some insights on reframing the next chapter of your life. What is a message that resonated with you the most? Let me know on social media, on Instagram at enikototh.me. And I would like to just say, if no one has told you today yet, that you are strong. These are hard times, so be kind to yourself. You are more than what you appear to be. The word strength and power rest inside you. You are a real warrior, and you can make anything happen. So keep fighting, keep pushing. One way or another, you will make it happen. If you would like to connect with Maria, check out her links in the podcast description, or if you would like to look into my work, go to my website www.enikototh.me. I would love to hear from you and work with you as well. Have a wonderful day. See you on the next episode. If you found this episode motivating, make sure that you share it with others and text this to your friend right now who you think would be inspired by this story. The best way to live a happy and fulfilled life is to serve others. So share this episode with people you care about. It has no cost, but will elevate them and make their lives even better. If this is your first time here, click that love and subscribe buttons and make sure that you leave a rating and review. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on how this message lifted you up, brought you a change into your life. I would also love to hear your own definition of success. I'm so grateful for your support, sending love and great health to you all. And now it is time for you to be on the ball.